Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Today on Sports Files, we'll discuss the departure of Grizzlies head coach Dave Joerger and look at who the team may turn to replace him. I'll be joined by members of the Three Shades of Blue radio team. Last week on Sports Files, I was joined by Grizzlies general manager Chris Wallace to discuss the many questions the organization faces heading into the offseason. When I asked Chris about Coach Dave Joerger and a possible contract extension, Chris steered away from the question in lightning fashion. Of course, to be fair, there was no way Chris was going to divulge any information to me about the team's specific plans. But when I look back at the interview, which took place midweek, I wonder if Chris had already looked at the possibility of moving on from his head coach before it was officially announced on Saturday. Joerger certainly forced the Grizzlies' hand when it was discovered he wanted to speak to the Sacramento Kings officials about their head coaching vacancy, which he would subsequently get offered and accept. But playing devil's advocate, if there's a chance to make more than double your salary and add 3 guaranteed years to your contract, why wouldn't you want to discuss the possibility, especially if you are about to go into what could be a lame duck year? So in the end, this could end up being a win-win for both parties involved. It certainly is for Dave Joerger. And now it's in the Grizzlies' corner. Who will they hire to replace him? And what would it mean for the immediate future of this organization? Today we'll discuss the possible candidates to replace Joerger, plus all the other pressing offseason issues for the team. And joining me will be the gang from Three Shades of Blue Radio and 3SOB.com. Josh Colvin, Jonathan May, and Philip Dean. And it's next on Sports Files. Guys, great to have you on the show today.
Appreciate the invitation.
How about Three Shades of Blue television? That's exactly what we got going on.
I like that.
It's definitely an idea.
Initial reaction to the firing of Dave Joerger, and now that we've had time to dissect everything and to digest everything, now your thoughts, if they have changed from your initial reaction. Josh, let me start with you.
Well, of course, when the news broke, we were live on the air on radio, and so we were trying to get information as quickly as we could, but my thoughts haven't changed that much, even with all the information that's come out from Chris Wallace and from others. It sounds like it was a mutual thing, that both sides were ready to try something different, and so both were ready to move on to something else.
Philip?
To quote the great Michael Scott, fool me once, strike one. Fool me twice, strike three. And it seems, though, as if Joerger was ready to go, and Chris Wallace called his bluff and said, all right, you looking elsewhere? We'll let you go.
Jonathan?
That was definitely kind of the way I saw it, was a bluff got called. It's one thing you can buy that a guy like Dave, Minnesota was a dream job. He has roots there, all that. Nobody's dream job is Sacramento. And so if that was the call he wanted to make, that he wanted to talk to Sacramento, that tells you a lot about how he felt about being here, how committed he was to it. And after everything they've been through the last couple of years, it made sense to me. I'm not that surprised.
So the way you guys are describing it, it seems like nobody's fault, nobody's to blame, we move on from here. Philip, is that the way you look at it?
That's how I looked at it. It was pretty much just like, okay, I think we need to start looking forward, and you want to move on and look to other future endeavors. Let's just separate our ways here, and we'll just see how things go from here.
Jonathan, it's different in a way from the whole Lionel Hollins deal, because Lionel certainly wanted to stay and Dave wanted to go. But it's pretty amazing to me that we have just had no reaction from Grizzly Nation, from the fan base. With Hollins, certainly he had his supporters, and they came out in droves. I'm hearing crickets with the Joerger news.
Well, Hollins had the Western Conference Finals in the rearview mirror when that termination or the failure to renew his contract happened. So I think that the tone of the success he had was a little more pronounced than it was with Joerger. But I think that Joerger never really endeared himself to the fans, and Hollins certainly had his cantankerous way about him, but in a way, I think people found it endearing. Like, he was grumpy, but he was our grumpy old coach. Joerger, I don't ever think he connected in that way, and I think that people found the things they thought when Hollins left, they would be less frustrated by. Turned out Joerger was in a lot of ways the same coach. He stuck with lineups and rotations that didn't make sense. He didn't play the young guys, and that frustrated people.
And by no means we're trying to kick a guy when he's down. He's gone now.
He's making $4 million a year in Sacramento.
Yeah,
he's okay.
No issues as far as that's concerned. But how would you evaluate, Josh, the job Joerger did? The team stayed in the playoffs. They went to the postseason each of his 3 years. There was some issues behind closed doors with players and style and things of that nature. But overall, how do you grade it out?
Well, I think, you look at what he was able to accomplish, especially with some of the adversity that he dealt with. And I agree with what Chris Wallace said. One of the things he said in his Q&A session that was posted on the Grizzlies website, it wasn't about his coaching. It wasn't about the on-the-court product. And so I think Dave did an admirable job there. I don't think there was an issue with what he did coaching, other than to allude to what Jonathan had said, not playing the young guys enough necessarily and grousing about not having certain guys on his roster that he thought he should have, a Ryan Hollins or a player like that. I think you have to give, Dave Joerger probably at somewhere in the neighborhood of a B-, C+. He was a good to average coach for what he was given.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Joerger's going into the final year of his contract. There's no discussion, at least not that we know of a contract extension. I asked Chris Wallace on this show last week. He avoided it like the plague. So you're Joerger, you're going into what could possibly be a lame duck season.
Right.
$2 million. They're getting bargain basement price for their coach compared to everybody else around the league. Do you blame him?
No, not at all. And that's it. Dave Joerger couldn't coach in under those circumstances, because if he has a bad year next year, because we don't know what's going to happen with the roster. We don't know what's going to happen with Mike Conley, how Marc Gasol is going to return from injury. You can't blame Dave Joerger at all for not wanting to go through something like that, not knowing what the future could hold. One bad year and he's out of coaching for a few years.
Jonathan, does that say anything about the front office, Chris Wallace specifically, that Dave Joerger may not have been in their future plans?
I think that if they had been serious about wanting to entertain an extension with him, that those conversations would have taken place in a way that you wouldn't have heard, I want to go to Sacramento. If they wanted to pay him $4 million a year, I think it would have been really interesting to see if he would have wanted to stay here. I don't know, we haven't had a chance to talk about it on air, but if it was just about money, if they had offered him a $4 million a year extension for 3 more years, would that have been enough for him to have been satisfied? I think the front office's sense, and this is just me reading tea leaves, was that it was never going to be enough with him. He was always going to have a little bit of wanderlust, and he was always going to be trying to leverage something. And when you combine that with not maybe the open insubordination we saw towards the end of the Lionel era, but certainly a willingness to buck the trend and speak his mind, I think they just decided that it made more sense to let him go find somewhere else.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think you guys are right on. But I do wonder, because Chris was quick to, and let me address this to you, Philip. Josh made a great point about Chris Wallace coming out and saying it's not about the X's and O's. This guy can coach, but we want somebody committed to the organization.
Right.
Well, again, playing devil's advocate, how can you commit to the organization if they're not committing to you with a long-term contract?
I look at this from Robert Parrish's perspective. He's a billionaire. He's making a huge business. A lot of these people in those types of businesses have 3-year plans, have 5-year plans. He's got to be talking to Chris Wallace, go, where do you see us 5 years from now, 3 years from now at least? And I don't think they saw Dave Joerger in that future. So I think they had to tell Robert that, and I think Robert gave them the okay of like, okay, if you don't feel like this is what our future holds with Joerger, then we need to move on and see what we can do.
All right, and we'll move on to candidates in just a second. First, I want to ask you this. Chris Wallace has poo-pooed this every time he hears it, that there's disharmony, there's discord within the front office of the organization. But we hear national guys, even us locally, wondering who calls the shots. Wallace has come out and said he calls the shots. Who calls the shots, Josh, in your opinion?
This might be the first time I can actually say that Chris Wallace is calling the shots for the Memphis Grizzlies. We know during the years that Michael Heisey was owner, he was more than willing to overstep Chris Wallace and make a draft pick or two or demand on something to happen. Obviously, with Jason Levian here, Chris Wallace wasn't running things. I think this is probably the first time we can say Chris Wallace is in charge of making all the calls, and that will include this coaching hire and the upcoming draft.
Jonathan, do you believe that? People think Joe Abadi's the guy behind closed doors.
I think that certainly Chris is taking ownership of the decisions that are being made, but I have always perceived Chris to be presiding over a committee of people who are bringing him their ideas within different realms. You know, with the draft, I think Hollinger plays a much larger role. With free agency, frankly, I don't know who's calling the shots. Free agency in Memphis has been rather sparse, but I think that Josh is right. It appears now that Chris is being given a chance. This is probably the first coach he's actually hired in Memphis, but I still don't think there's a clear line of control. I think that obviously Robert Pera signs off ultimately on whatever decision is made. I think that recommendation comes from Chris Wallace. I just don't know if the recommendation that Chris gives him is really his all the time.
Chris Wallace has come out and said, Philip, that whatever it takes financially. Do you believe it? Do you believe the Grizzlies are willing to step up 2-3 times what they're paying now for a coach?
Absolutely, because this is the biggest free agency that we will ever see in the NBA with the new TV deals coming in, and they want to find a way to get that big free agent. I don't know if they haven't been able to in the past. Maybe they need to borrow some money from Justin Timberlake, their minority owner as well, but they're going to have to do whatever it takes because people are worried about the franchise in the next couple of years of where it's going with, like you said, we don't know how Mark's going to be. We don't know if Mike Conley is going to resign, but I think that they're going to have to find a big free agent.
I think you have to remember also that next year you're going to have a AutoZone or FedEx logo or something sitting right there on the jersey, so you can find a few extra $1 million every year going forward.
It's not going to be NASCAR, but there is going to be some room for sponsors. All right, let's get into it now. So many candidates out there, the possibility of a former head coach, an assistant coach, a rising assistant coach. Chris Wallace has even said college ranks, which I don't believe is the direction they'll go. Give me some names, Jonathan. Who would you like at the top?
I mean, right now, if you gave me a blank check and told me to go hire a coach, I probably would go hire Frank Vogel. I think he's the best name on the market right now, and it'll be really interesting to see from his perspective how he views Houston versus Memphis versus now, as of today, Orlando, as open jobs. And I think he's probably the best coach available. The college ranks are interesting, though. And you look at what Boston has done going and getting a college coach. Chicago, maybe not a great example this year, but I still think that Hoiberg can be successful there.
OKC with Billy Donovan?
Yeah. You know, you can let me coach Durant and Westbrook. I think I can probably get them there.
Well, then I could say that about San Antonio.
That's true.
I could say that about Cleveland and Golden
true.
State. Okay, so Vogel, real quick on this one. Indiana, not great offensively. Larry Bird got rid of him because of that. We live now in a different NBA. The Grizzlies have to do something offensively to get up and keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
Is that the right move? To bring in a guy who's not an offensive-oriented guy?
That is the catch with him, and I don't know if it's fair to judge his ability to put together an offense with what they had going on in Indiana. Just like the personnel in Memphis has limited what they can do offensively.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Josh.
For me, I think Vogel he's the smart, safe choice, but he is the number 2 choice for me. I would much rather them put Ettore Messina, the Spurs assistant, who of course he's a EuroLeague coaching just legend. I mean, he's won the EuroLeague championship 4 times, been coach of the year multiple times, and he was obviously with the Lakers at one point too as a consultant under Mike Brown. I think that's the guy that is going to be more willing to embrace this modern NBA. As you said, I mean, the defense first, offense second coaches don't tend to do so well. And so I think he would be a more interesting guy to look at, as well as having a little bit of familiarity with Marc Gasol in the past.
Is this the old if you can't beat them, join them thing? Take a Spurs assistant coach like Atlanta did and Philly did?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Philip, who do you like?
I think the smartest and safe choice would be Frank Vogel, absolutely, because, I mean, he's the best coach out there. I don't really see anyone on the college level that would really intrigue me. But if we're talking assistants, I think Patrick Ewing would be a good fit for Memphis because that's a guy that I think players would respect and they would play hard for. I mean, and he's got an old school mentality, but I think he could bring some new school to the Grizzlies.
And nobody's going to outsweat him either.
No, no.
I'm going to try.
Let's play rapid fire in our final few minutes. You saw the picture of Chris Wallace and Lionel Hollins. Yes or no? Anything to it?
No, I think they're just having dinner.
Just having good old humdingers.
I think so.
Philip?
I think they're just having a good dinner.
I think there was a little something to it just because of the timing of it. I don't think that it was necessarily an outright interview, but they obviously discussed the job at that point.
Chris can keep it in his back pocket in
I
case
believe
something
so.
happens.
But is there a possibility that they had the talk and said, look, we're going to look for someone else right now, maybe an assistant, and if it doesn't work out, you're going to be the first person I call to be an interim head
Yeah,
coach.
but Lionel doesn't seem like that kind of guy that wants to be sloppy seconds. I don't know.
I think you'd be lucky to have Lionel be willing to listen to you coming back as head coach.
Real quick, Scott Skiles was news this week. Orlando, boom, 1 year and Skiles said goodbye. Does he do anything
That's
for
a
you?
hard pass for me.
Okay.
I'd say no.
And Josh?
Yeah, again, it's a guy who values vets and defense over everything else, and we've seen plenty of that over the last few years.
Okay, maybe a more important story in the offseason, even over who the coach is, but it goes hand in hand, is whether or not you can re-sign Mike Conley. The coach will have a lot to do with it. What they do with other free agents, that will have a lot to do with it. When it's all said and done, Mike Conley, is he back with the Grizzlies? Jonathan?
I think so. If I'd make a bet today, I think he's back.
And
I'm
give
worried
me
about what
give
the
me
contract
major
looks
reason
like.
why.
I think that ultimately he's comfortable here. He wants to play with Mark, and I think that the Grizzlies will put the money in front of him that makes it make sense for him. Now, whether that's a good idea for the franchise in the long run is certainly an open question.
That's a great point. Is he worth 5 years at a package of over $150 million, Josh?
With the way that the salary cap's going up, I think you have to look at signing him for that, just because you don't have any other options, especially as a point guard. You know, looking at bringing somebody back this offseason, there aren't any other options. And so you'll be looking at going through this season without a point guard. Otherwise, yeah, I think you have to pay him whatever he's worth. I don't think he's going to get a full max. I think he'll get the Rudy max, to where it's more than another team can pay, but not the full amount you can pay.
Certainly questions after 9 years of the bumps and the bruises he has taken, but you're right. I don't think there's any other option. And this guy's proven he's one of the elite.
I agree. Mike Conley will be back in Memphis next season. I think he wants to be the franchise guy here, and I think he will be the guy that says, I want to carry this team for the next 5 years.
Got less than a minute. Give me a free agent. Be realistic here. Don't say Kevin Durant. It's not happening. I don't believe so. That the Grizzlies can get. Jonathan?
I mean, I think you make a run at a guy like Nick Batum or Evan Fournier, but I don't know.
Can you get him?
I don't know. Everyone's going to be offering max money to everybody.
Philip?
I think Evan Fournier or Harrison Barnes is the guy that I think they can get.
I think they can get Harrison Barnes. Josh?
For me, the guy's Alan Crabb with Portland. We saw him have a fantastic series against Golden State. He's a guy that I really think could help bolster their wing scoring.
Josh Coleman, Philip Dean, Jonathan May, the 3 Shades of Radio, 3 Shades of Blue Radio, and 3shadesofblue.com. Great job, guys. Appreciate the input. Keep up all the good work. You can hear them, of course, on Real Sports Talk, Sports 56 and 87.7 FM. We'll take a break. Overtime is next. The University of Memphis men's golf team is gearing up for the NCAA Regionals, which begins on Monday. The Tigers will participate in Kohler, Wisconsin, one of 6 regionals around the country. The top 5 teams from each site will move on to the NCAA Championship later this month in Eugene, Oregon. For Memphis, junior Lars Van Mile, the Jack Nicklaus Award semifinalist, is hoping to lead the Tigers to a top 5 finish. Lars, who graduated from Memphis last weekend and did so in 3 years, grew up in the Netherlands before deciding to come to the States and attend the U of M. He's bright, he's talented, and he seems to have a game plan for his future. Here's my interview with Lars before the team headed out to Wisconsin. Well, Lars, first of all, thanks for being with us.
No problem.
We appreciate it. Congratulations on a couple of things. Number one, of course, your golf game, but you are a recent graduate of the University of Memphis, and you did it in 3 years.
Yeah, I'm very glad and happy to be done in 3 years, and it's been a great experience here. Not only for golf, but I've met a lot of good friends now, and academically I've learned a lot too. So,
how hard was it to balance academics, athletics, having a good time? You are a young man, a student, you want to have fun. Was that tough balancing it?
I mean, not really. Like, yeah, you just need to prioritize things, and we have practice in the morning often. And then at night you study, and you go to class in the afternoon, and then at night you study a bit. And yeah, it's more like you study all together also as a team. Me and my roommates study together and help each other, so that helps a lot too.
Well, also congratulations for becoming a semifinalist for the Jack Nicklaus Award. Growing up in the Netherlands, how much did you know of the Golden Bear?
No, I knew a lot about him. Of course, he has 18 major records, and people say he's the best golfer that ever played the game. I still think it's Tiger, but but yeah, of course I knew who he is.
To be one of the 30 named semifinalists, you have to be pretty proud of yourself.
Yeah, no, it's a great honor, and I was on the course, and then I saw a coach tweeted out something about it, and then I saw what it was, and it's basically a player of the year in college, and it's pretty special.
The regionals are next week. You go up to Wisconsin with the hope of getting into the NCAA tournament,
Yep.
hopefully as a team, as a unit, but if not, as an individual. What are your chances?
I mean, it's always going to be tough. The competition's high, and every team that's going there probably has a chance to finish in top 5. So, I mean, we just have to play do our best, and hopefully it'll be good enough.
Lars, what are your strengths on the golf course, and then what's the area that you really think you need to work on the most?
I think my iron play is my strength, and I would say, yeah, mentally I never give up, put it that way. Sometimes you don't have your A game, but you still have to, make something make a score, post score, and I'm pretty good at that. And I've learned that here with coach, working on it. And I would say my weakness is my wedge play and my driver.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I can hit my driver long, but not always straight. So yeah, I'm working on that.
Long and straight, the keys, right?
Yeah, that's the
Long and
key,
straight.
yeah.
You were born in Italy,
Yeah.
and then you moved to the Netherlands, so your teenage years in the Netherlands, but you started playing golf at 9 in Italy. What got you into the sport?
My dad started playing, and back home, back in Italy, it was a lot of more of a country club scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I started with a couple of friends, but we'd be playing mostly soccer or football back there, and then slowly we'd progress more to golf and less football, and at the end there was only golf, and then just compete on the golf course instead of playing football.
So you're in the Netherlands, you're playing golf, you're going to high school, and now you're thinking about what you want to do for college, and you think, I want to go to the States. How do you showcase your skills? Do you send tapes of yourself, and how do you get connected with the University of Memphis?
Yeah, no, you send tapes, and you kind of send a letter to all the universities that you're interested, and then you have also coaches contact you and ask you if I want to go there, and phone calls and stuff, and then the whole process starts about where you want to go, and you have to do research because of course I don't know what all the universities are. You have to talk to the different coaches, what they have to offer, and just make a choice from there.
There are obviously golfers who have succeeded on tour. They didn't go to college, didn't go to the States. They come from their country and they've moved on to bigger and better things. But it seems like, especially in the last 20 years, a lot more of the players that we see on tour that are from outside the country went the college route in the States.
Yeah.
Does that seem to be the trend?
I mean, I think also, like, because the competition is so high also on tour, a lot of students or Europeans also want a degree too.
Right.
And since you can combine it really well here, and back home it's tougher to combine school and playing golf. So a lot of us come here so we can compete at the highest level and still get a degree.
You got your degree after 3 years, as I mentioned. You're getting ready for your regionals. Hopefully you go on to the NCAA tournament. This is only your junior year. Are you going to make the move and turn professional after this is over?
Yeah, I'm turning pro at the end of the year. I'm playing this summer for the Netherlands, playing for my country everywhere probably, and then hopefully World Cup is in September, and if I make the team there, we play Mexico, and then after that I turn professional and try go on a European tour.
The Olympics are this year. Will the Netherlands field a team for Olympic golf?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how. I think Joost Luiten is one of our European Tour players. He's going for sure, and I think one of our LPGA Tour players is going, and I think that's for sure. I don't know who else is going to be there though.
All right, let me end it with this. You're going to turn pro. You've had a great career at the University of Memphis. What do you feel? How confident are you in your prospects that you're going to have a successful professional career and could wave that Memphis banner proudly when you win some championships?
I mean, yeah, I feel like I have the game. I can compete. I a pretty high level if I'm playing good. So I think it's just a matter of trying to get better every day, and then we'll see at the end of the journey where I'll be.
Well, Lars, we wish you the best of luck next week, starting at the regionals,
thank you.
and then throughout your professional career. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to Lars and the entire Tigers squad. One other note before we say goodbye, new Tigers men's hoop coach Tubby Smith has officially announced his coaching staff. Joining Smith as assistants will be Alvin Pooh Williamson, Joe Esposito, and Tubby's son Saul. So Goodson will be the Tigers' director of basketball operations, and the only returnee from Josh Pastner's staff is Keelan Lawson, now the Tigers' director of player development. And that'll do it for now. Have yourselves a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.